So, let's talk about the United Kingdom. It's one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, right? Full of history, culture, bustling cities. But there's something going on. A really interesting trend is popping up. People are leaving. Specifically, the young, the skilled, the ambitious. And in this explainer, we're going to dig into why.
So that really is the big question, isn't it? What is driving this exodus? Why are so many talented people starting to look for their future somewhere outside of the UK? Well, the answers tell a pretty complex story about a nation that seems to be at a major crossroads.
Let's start in London, which is supposed to be the economic engine of the whole country. But behind all that big money and shiny exterior, there's a pretty shocking statistic. It's estimated that 1 in every 50 people in the city is homeless. And what's really staggering is that this number has shot up by over 50% in just 1 decade.
And this squeeze isn't just happening to the most vulnerable. For the average person, real wages, that's what you earn after you factor in the rising cost of everything, have basically gone nowhere for 15 years. Think about that. People are getting paid pretty much the same as they were back in 2008, but the price of, well, everything has just skyrocketed.
And this right here gets to the heart of why people are packing their bags. For skilled workers, the financial incentive to leave is just undeniable. A young professional starting their career can literally earn more than double in a city like New York compared to London. Now, you might say, well, New York is more expensive, and you'd be right, but it's only about a third more expensive. The math is simple, and for a lot of people, it's leading straight to a serious brain drain.
You know, to really understand why today feels so tough for so many, we actually need to rewind the clock a bit. Because it wasn't that long ago that Britain was seen as this incredibly vibrant, prosperous, and exciting place to be. An era a lot of people remember as Cool Britannia.
And listen, this isn't just fuzzy nostalgia. A recent poll found that a huge majority of people, 60%, genuinely feel that life was better back in the 90s and 2000s. There was this real sense of optimism in the air, and honestly, the economic data from back then, it pretty much backs up that feeling.
So starting in 1992, Britain went on this incredible run, its longest period of uninterrupted growth since the Second World War. But that 2008 financial crisis, wow, it didn't just end the party, it ripped the curtains back and exposed some really deep underlying weaknesses in the economy that had been kind of ignored for years.
Which brings us right back to the problems of today. And maybe the most painful, most urgent issue for millions of people is the housing crisis. It's not just that there aren't enough places to live, it's that the homes that do exist are just completely unaffordable for most normal people.
So, how on earth did it get this bad? Well, it started with a policy called Right to Buy, which let people in public housing buy their homes. On paper, it sounded great for creating homeowners. The problem, the homes that were sold off were never replaced. So all those people were then forced into the private rental market, which sent demand and, of course, rents through the absolute roof.
And just to give you a sense of the scale of this problem, check this out. In England today, there are 1.4 million fewer households living in social housing than there were back in 1980. That is a massive hole in the country's social safety net, and it's never been filled.
And the direct results of all this? Well, in 2023, a record-breaking 112,000 English households were living in temporary accommodation. That number has more than doubled just since 2010. And we're not just talking about numbers here. These are families, often living in terrible conditions, trapped in a cycle that just wrecks their ability to work, go to school, and have any kind of stability.
Okay, so the crisis doesn't just stop at housing. It goes deeper. It's affecting the very engine of the economy, its productivity, and the public services that everyone relies on, like the world-famous National Health Service, or NHS.
Now, productivity can sound like a really dry, boring economic term, but I promise you it is so important. All it really means is how efficiently a country makes stuff and provides services. If your productivity is high, you get higher wages and a better standard of living for everyone. And in the UK, productivity has basically flatlined.
So what's causing this stall? Well, a huge part of the problem is a chronic lack of investment. British companies invest about 20% less than their peers in countries like the US, France, and Germany. And when you don't invest, you get outdated technology, you get less innovation, and your growth just grinds to a halt. And nowhere do you see this strain more clearly than in the NHS. It's facing this really bizarre paradox. Look at the numbers. Funding is up 11% since 2019. Even after inflation, the number of senior doctors is up 9%. But the results? They're getting worse. The treatment waitlist has more than doubled since 2014, and cancer survival rates are lagging behind similar countries.
So what is going on?
Why is more money leading to worse results? Well, it's something called health inflation. You've got an aging population that just needs more care. New medicines and tech are super expensive. And of course, the staff need to be paid more. So all that extra money is just getting swallowed up by the day-to-day costs, leaving almost nothing for long-term investment in things like more beds or new hospitals.
So when you start to put all these pieces together, the housing crisis, the stagnant economy, the strained public services, a really worrying picture of the UK's future starts to come into focus.
Now, you might be thinking, what about Brexit, or all those big infrastructure projects that seem to fail? And it's true, things like that have absolutely made a difficult situation even worse. But, and this is a really key point, they aren't the root cause. Many of these problems have been brewing for decades.
Let's look at what this actually means for people's wallets. Back in 2007, the average UK household was about 8% worse off than its neighbors in places like France or Germany. Today, that gap has exploded to 20%. The UK isn't just standing still, it is actively falling behind.
And this really gets to the personal, human cost of this decline. There's always been this unspoken promise, right? That each generation would do better than the one before it. Well, that promise now appears to be broken. For the first time in modern history, an entire generation is on track to be poorer than their parents.
In fact, this slide is happening so fast that according to some projections, the average family in Slovenia will be better off than the average British family this year. And the average Polish family could be better off by the end of the decade. Just let that sink in for a moment.
And all of this leads us to one final, massive question. With such deep-rooted problems in housing, in the economy, in its public services, can the United Kingdom actually find a way to turn this around? Can it reverse this cycle of decline and become a place where its best and brightest want to stay and build a future? That really is the defining challenge for the years ahead.